Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. Robbie, what do we have?
Will Jawando and Amy Tarkanian are in for Team Rising, and they'll weigh in on the ongoing Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And then Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis joins us to discuss our nation's heroes. But first, President Biden visited Baltimore's port yesterday to deliver remarks on the infrastructure bill. He addressed October's inflation numbers, which rose to a concerning 6.2% in the last year. Let's watch.
Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create good-paying union jobs, not good job, not $12 an hour, not $15 an hour, $45 an hour and up with good benefits, so you can raise a family on and build the middle class out. And jobs that cannot be outsourced. You can't outsource these jobs.
And as rising prices and Biden's handling of the economy continue to drag down Biden's approval rating, most economists believe inflation will cool as pandemic-related supply chain bottlenecks ease. Workers return to the workforce and consumers shift spending back towards services and away from overloaded goods. While in Baltimore, Biden stressed the importance of his Build Back Better bill and claimed it would combat inflation by bringing Americans back to work. Mitch McConnell's communications director compared wages to the rate of inflation and tweeted, "If you haven't received a pay raise of 6.2% or greater since last Thanksgiving, you have gotten an effective pay cut under Democrats' policies." Business Insider notes that while inflation prints stemming from pandemic reopenings are nothing new, the concern about October's CPI report is that nearly every category is seeing accelerated price growth. According to Claudia Sahm, senior fellow at the Jane Family Institute and former Federal Reserve and White House economist, the best way the administration can help struggling families is by keeping the child tax credit coming to families in need and passing Biden's social spending bill. She joins us now. Claudia, welcome.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. So can you elaborate on that for us? So you say the best way to fight inflation would be to actually pass this bill.
Right. So it's so important to keep in perspective what we are living now, what we have lived over the past 2 years in the pandemic. While it is true that prices have risen a lot this year, and they do need to stop rising so fast and in some cases come down, we need to be very clear that we have seen wage increases at the bottom of the distribution. At low wage service workers are getting raises that they have not seen in decades. It is possible to pay people more. And in addition, the federal government, both administrations and Congress, have put out so much cash relief in the past year. A family of four received $11,400 in stimulus checks alone. That is a quarter of Black family median income, 20% of all families' median income, and now also from the rescue plan and hopefully extended, families are getting $300 per month for young children, $250 for older children. That is covering the increases in the grocery bills. That is so important. Congress knew with the rescue plan we were going to need a lifeline through this pandemic. We are still in this pandemic. And the money going to children, this is an investment in our future. There is no better money that we can spend.
And Claudia, later in the show, we're going to be talking about the role of Saudi Arabia in keeping energy production low and driving up inflation. What's your read on Saudi Arabia's role and also the effect of energy prices on our overall inflation that we're seeing?
Right. So we are seeing increases in gasoline, in food prices. These are big problems. They are not problems that the Federal Reserve solves by raising interest rates. The Biden administration should be doing everything they can to get these problems solved. One possibility is to open up the strategic reserves. I don't know why we have them, if not for a moment like now. And there are all kinds of trade restrictions that were put in place in the past that if we took them off in a smart way, maybe even temporarily, this would provide some relief. The administration has a lot of tools at its disposal, and they need to use them now.
Claudia, one of the charts you use illustrates the difference between lower income and higher income family spending trends. For families with income at the bottom, 20% rent, groceries, gas, and medical care account for over 80% of all their spending versus 65% for families at the top. When prices of these goods and services go up, it essentially squeezes the budgets of low and moderate income families, leaving less for everything else. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. This is a long-standing, very frustrating aspect of the U.S. economy. We have so much inequality. We have so many workers that went into this crisis not being paid a living wage, racking up debt. And this is a reality. There's a lot of people that have made do with too little, and it goes to the necessities, the basics. Now, this is why the child tax credit is so important, because it is helping them. It is taking some pressure off of this budget squeeze, which is real right now. A lot of these necessities have gotten more expensive. Get them money, and then there are other things in both the infrastructure and also the current legislation being discussed that would help fix some of these structural problems. Unaffordable housing is not new, right? It got a lot of attention yesterday because rent prices move back up, but you got to build stuff to fix that problem over the long term. And we're talking about doing this. I mean, this is a really exciting moment in terms of helping people over the long term. It's also an absolute mess in terms of what's happening right now.
Right. And Claudia, Larry Summers has been out there taking a victory lap because he warned a few months about inflation. What I think is, I'll tell you what I think is going on. I want to get your take on it. What I think is going on is, one, a little bit of bitterness about not being hired by this White House. And two, the American Rescue Plan was a real kind of rebuke to his response to the financial crisis. He swapped in his own political judgment for the judgment of economists and said, we can't get, in 2009, the size of package through Congress that we need, and so we're going to advise to the president that we go for a smaller package. Lo and behold, 10 years later, Biden is able to get a package 3 times bigger, through Congress right in the beginning of the administration. So it felt to me like he saw that there was going to be inflation. Everybody knew there was going to be inflation for the next several months, and he latched onto that so that he could then kind of dunk on his erstwhile colleagues. But what's your read on what Larry Summers' role in this has been?
Right. So first I'll say that I worked at the Federal Reserve for over a decade. I started right before the Great Recession began. One of the things that I was taught as a forecaster, and I'm a very good one, you never brag, because you could have gotten lucky. And it's just why. It's not about us. It's not about our egos. It's about what's happening in the world and the American people. So it's disappointing. I was taught not to do it. I'm not surprised. It's happening out in the world. And frankly, I don't care about Larry's feelings or the White House. It is truly, truly beside the point. What we all missed is that COVID would not go away. Even when we had the vaccines, the Delta variant has caused a lot of the disruptions, both what we saw on the employment side the last few months. It showed up in prices. Inflation had stepped down the past several months, and some of that was for a bad reason. People weren't willing to go out and spend. So I think we really have to focus on where we are right now. I truly believe the American Rescue Plan, I truly believe the $5 trillion that went out during COVID was the absolute best policy that we have done in 40 years. But who cares what I think or Larry thinks? I care that people have enough money in their pockets to pay their bills. So it's a fascinating aspect of Washington, but most of that's not where the world is. So anyways, I think it's unfortunate. I think we have wasted a considerable amount of time. But at the end of the day, the policymakers are making good decisions.
Biden is allegedly weighing whether to keep Jerome Powell as chair of the Federal Reserve for a second term or elevate Governor Lael Brainard to the post. A Market Watch poll found that Brainard has a 30% chance of landing the job, while Powell has a 69% chance, though these numbers came out before the latest inflation report. What's your, I know you just said you wouldn't brag about any prediction, but you can make predictions. What do you think?
Right. I want both of them. I want Jay Powell. No, I'm serious. I want Jay Powell back in as Fed chair, and I want Lael as vice chair. Vice chair is a Fed chair in waiting. She absolutely deserves the job, but they are the dynamic duo. I watch them work together. Jay is good about building teams, and he absolutely looks to Lael for her deep expertise in what's the right policy and in the economics. So let's keep that going. And I am adamant that every single appointment that Biden needs to make, and he needs to make them like now, and he has 5, they all have to be the best team possible. Some greater than the parts, and technical and not political. I have my picks. I'm sure I'm going to be disappointed on some of them, but honestly, we are moving towards, I do really think, Jay as chair and Lael as a vice chair. That's good. That's good news.
So, Claudia, while corporate media is panicking over inflation, supporters of a more populist economy and more equitable economy say, in some ways, it could be a good thing. So here's John Schwartz of The Intercept writes, inflation is often good for most of us, but it's terrible for the kinds of people who own corporate news outlets or, say, founded coal firms. And a panic about inflation usually creates the conditions to weaken the power of working people. How do you parse the inflationary aspects that hit people where it actually does hurt, and the type of inflation that corporate executives look at that they can weaponize against their labor force?
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about what inflation is, who it hurts, who it doesn't hurt. I try to walk a very fine line. I do not want to sugarcoat the prices at the gas pump or in the grocery store. That's why I said I think the other like the relief, the money in people's pockets absolutely had to come with this, because I'm not going to dismiss what it feels like to pay those prices. At the end of the day, we don't eat food prices, we eat food. And you can clearly see that Americans they have more food, they have more like we have gotten more stuff, right? So, but who is hurt when inflation is high? People that have millions of dollars in bonds, people who have loaned out a lot of money and are going to get paid not inflation adjusted, they're hurting. I try very hard not to ascribe intentions, but if you look at the people who are the hawks, the people who have credentials like I do, they have millions of dollars in their bank accounts. I don't.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's messy. Like, we're hurting in a lot of ways. Frankly, the way we're hurting the most is we're losing loved ones still to a virus, even though we have vaccines. So there's all kinds of sadness and frustration around, but like there's a lot of that's being said. There's a lot about inflation that has nothing to do with economics.
Yeah. Well, Claudia, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Coming up next, we'll tell you what's on our radar. Stick around for that.